All right, welcome to Pass the Mic for Friday, September 22nd, 2023, episode 87. That's Sidney Crosby's number. If you didn't know, Mike Gervasi, how are you?
I'm Jeff Campbell, former Detroit Lion, too. How you doing?
Pretty good. I wonder who's had the more prestigious career. Pat Caputo would probably tell you the Detroit Lion if he's on the radio tonight. Welcome back. We had our special guest last week, the king of feedback, Mr. Max Bailey. So we didn't really get feedback from him, right? Because he was on the episode. But did you
Yeah,
get some? You got a lot of feedback. It's going to lead to our top a second straight week of a flip flop show, right? You got a lot of
yeah,
feedback.
yeah. Oh my God, we got a ton. So let me just start with some of the feedback on the sports. John, my sister's boo, if you will, he mentioned first off he apologized. I think what happened was one of those things where we'll get to the sports thing in a second, where he commented on one of your grammar things trying to be funny, and I think he caught that. There's just that's you can't be funny if you're not in person with a person. So
Yeah, and I don't mind.
yeah, but he
I,
sent the apology text.
I don't care.
Um, he his favorite game was Wings Avs from March of '97, the fight
Is it?
game.
Oh, the fight game.
The
Okay.
fight
Yeah.
game, yeah.
All right.
He Bill Burguy mentioned loving Mike Schmidt, and he thinks I'm getting replaced by Max.
Not Wojo, of course, the
Not
famous
Woj.
pitcher
Oh, maybe
who put
what
the,
was it, Wojo? You might want to talk about that a little bit.
that was so we recorded what night did we record the episode? That would have been
We must have
Wednesday.
done Wednesday, and you went.
Wednesday, and we went and we entered, and I've occasionally on this show have badmouthed Wojo, and he was at the Woodhaven Buffalo Wild Wings with Jeff Rieger. 97 won the ticket. My son Nate was up there working, and by the way, it was sponsored by Miller Lite. They were giving out free bottles of Miller Lite, family friendly, very family friendly, if you ask me. And Wojo was there. He was going to walk out. I don't know if anyone notices on these night shows, he doesn't work as Rieger works a little longer than Wojo. I don't know what the contract situation is there.
I never caught that, but yeah.
Well, I caught it in person. He went to go use the restroom, and Ken Sikora, longtime
Hmm.
frequent commenter and listener, was there with his boy and a couple kids. And Max and I went up there together, and we grabbed Wojo for a group picture, which maybe I'll throw it up on I threw it up on regular Facebook. I put it up on our Facebook page. I put
Yeah,
it up on the and I offered to buy him a gin and tonic, his go-to drink, and he said no, thank you. He had a long drive, family
right.
friendly.
Family friendly. Yes. Um, Todd Bailey mentioned his favorite game, Michigan Ohio State 2021. That was a game Rocky Georgia and I attended in
You
person.
attended that in person.
Um, Deontay and Antoine. Deontay's a frequent listener. He's very excited to hear that Max was on the show. They coached together one year, and Deontay came on the staff. He he and Antoine both mentioned the Michigan Kansas game from 2013 when Trey Burke hit that 3-pointer to tie the game. And then it went to overtime and Michigan won. They eventually made it to the final game before losing to Louisville. Um, and just a quick little sidebar there to that story. Steve Kerr announced that game. I'll never forget. He was a great announcer. Now he's a great NBA Hall of Fame NBA coach. So yeah, he did announcing that game. Now a couple of things of feedback. I'll let you jump in here. Antoine was really laughing at my Cedar Point take, calling me old. Deontay mentioned something. This is pretty interesting, and I think you'll appreciate this. What he can't do as he's getting older, he cannot close out bars. Like at 10 or 11, he feels
Oh
like
no, no way.
right,
I
right,
don't I don't I don't know if I could do that. 130, 145.
right. No
Oh,
way.
I don't know, man. I remember many years ago, I flew into Vegas and my sister was getting married, and the bachelor party was that night that we arrived. So I flew in. So, you got the time change anyway, right? You fly in
Yeah,
early in the day. I spent did stuff during the day, hung out, then went out that evening. It was like a 24-hour outing by the time I ended up getting back to the hotel when you take the whole
yeah.
thing. I think I'd be dead now. I feel like that. I think I'd be
I
dead.
yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, no way. I don't see myself closing anything down. Like I said,
Anything?
we mentioned
Oh,
this before. As getting older, like having beverages during the day is much more enjoyable.
yes. I'm gonna hold off on one more. Mike Quinn sent us some comments. My brother is now listening. And
Oh, okay.
he just verbally told me, it mentioned Michigan, Kansas as well. Also Michigan, the Jordan Poole game. So we got a new listener with my brother now too.
Oh, excellent. I did get a little feedback too on our. Remember, we flip flop things. So our overrated,
Yes.
underrated was education, was conferences and open house, and the famous UP aficionado reached out to me to let me know that elementary conferences, even in the second time through, you got to round these people up, and it's very frustrating. As much as we say the second round's a little easier for us,
Yeah.
and then but of course it's that never-ending battle. I think so on and so forth. But yeah, that was, I mean, you did a great job on the feedback. Tom Pack did another great pitcher. I think
He
he
did.
incorporated the Wojo. Didn't he incorporate the Wojo pitcher into that? I thought
He
he did.
did. I think he
Yeah.
did. Now, oh, I got to mention one other thing. You mentioned this odd
Tom
segue.
Pack 1-0. He beat, or now 2-0. They
Yes.
won
Want to know?
1-0. They beat Woodhaven, right?
Yes. Both
Yes.
seventh and eighth.
Maybe they'll
Some.
have, maybe they should have him on the Warrior Way podcast. Good
Oh yeah.
boy comes home and beats the former school.
Nick Pack is also 1-0, the eighth grade Tom's son,
Okay.
his youngest son. So one other thing, Kristen mentioned something about she thought that the layout is cool with the outdoor thing, but she kind of likes the idea of being able to see the path your kid goes to start the year. So she's kind of likes the conventional open house as a way
Oh,
of kind
okay.
of
Okay.
hybrids. I thought that was an interesting
Yeah.
take.
I mean, I get it. Like, especially if you've never been in the building. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
now with conferences, you're not in the building. So you're right. A lot of people don't ever get to see the building. That's a good point. But again, this setup is a little more easier if you have multiple kids, which I think she has to deal with, right?
Right. 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 Yeah.
So, all right, Mike of the week time, right?
Yeah. That's
Mike of
you.
the week. Well, I predicted the Steelers would win a close one. Of course, I didn't count on their defense scoring as many touchdowns as their offense in 2 weeks, but it's happened. Um, so I'm going to go with an old school Pittsburgh Steeler,
Oh
Mike
man.
Webster.
I
Mike
knew it.
Webster
I
was the
knew it. I knew
center
it.
during the Steel Curtain days. Do you know he played from 1974 to 1990? Um,
Wow. I did
uh,
not.
yes, he finished the season 89-90 season with the Kansas City Chiefs. He was part of that amazing draft class they had with multiple Hall of Famers. He was a fifth round draft pick, just a staple at center.
That
And
is
he
crazy.
also died at a young age. I think like
Yes.
like
Yes.
for lack of better term, his brain was mush
Yes.
by
It
the
was.
time he reached. But I mean, I mean, we think about these players now that can't last 6, 7 years. Even in offensive line, we've talked about this before, seems to have some longevity still, even in this era of the
Right.
NFL. Joe Thomas and some of those guys, if their legs hold up, they can go a long time.
Mhm.
And you think about that, man. Like he was playing still in 89-90, a guy that
I
won 4 Super Bowls with the Steel Curtain.
I think of myself like I look at him and I think he the footage of him, he's so old. And to know that he lasted into Barry Sanders' career is pretty remarkable. I did.
Yeah, I just a crazy. I mean, I don't think anybody we'd see go that long nowadays. I mean, Tom Brady obviously went a long time, but as a quarterback, you're very much more protected. This was a guy that was
Yes.
getting hit on every play from
Right.
scrimmage.
Right.
And it's sort of a chain of Steelers centers that went from Mike Webster to Damani Dawson through to up to one of the Pouncey boys. They had a long stretch there of centers that just held down the fort. So
Yeah.
Mike Webster will go up on the wall once we got to update the wall. We're gonna get once cross country seasons and we'll get Studio B
We'll
all
have it. Yeah.
revamped and
I
that
got
sort of
you.
thing. So
Right. Right.
last week you decided you wanted to do this flip flop thing where you took the education topic and shifted it to overrated, underrated, and take what we normally sometimes talk about in the overrated, underrated, which is anything, and do this thing where we did most best wins in history of your sports team. So we're going to start again with overrated, underrated. We're going to do the flip
Mhm.
education topic, and the topic is, but it's a little bit, we're sneaking a little bit here, but it's that prime season now. It's high school football season. So high school football games, what do you got as overrated?
So
First of all, full disclosure, you
yeah.
and I work. We are on the home staff of every varsity home football game and JV home football game.
Yeah.
We're up in the booth working, so we
Right.
see a lot.
So we get to see a lot and we get to really kind of like just take it all in from up there. And so I'd really like Mike Candela, a frequent listener, to comment on this. My overrated is the notion of how big college football is in the South and in Texas. Now, I'm not saying
High
it's
school? Are
not.
you saying high
High
school?
school,
High
high
school. Yeah.
school,
Okay.
high school. I'm not saying it's not, but I think when you inevitably when you say that how big it is there, and you make movies, Friday Night Lights, and all that stuff, I think it takes away from how big it is here. It's a hell of an event here, right? And it's not.
Yes.
We take it very. It's a like last week we played Wyandotte, who was horrendous. No offense to the Bear elite there, but they
The
were.
Bear Trap. Paul
Yes, but
Showalter.
on our side, it was full. It was packed for
Yes.
it wasn't a homecoming game. It was just a regular season game, and it's an event every week. So I think that anytime you talk about, so again, overrated doesn't mean bad. Overrated, it's not even that it's untrue. I just think it takes away from what we have up here. So I'm saying the notion that football, high school,
High
yeah,
school football in the South.
right, right,
All right. Uh, this one may hit home for you in a way. My overrated are all these middle school doofuses running around at these football games. I'm so glad that I don't work security, or when we're on the road, I notice this more because we're not in the box, right?
right, right.
And I know like the policy, the quote unquote, the announcement that comes out via Parent Square, nobody can be dropped off without a parent, nobody's attending this without a parent there and this and that. But still, I think a lot of people think this is like a daycare for 3 hours on a Friday night, and it is just a uh, mess down there. And
Yeah,
we've
free
worked this
for
plenty of
all.
times. We've had walkie talkies in the past in the press box with security calling for people because of who knows what going on. Thankfully, we've closed in the bleachers underneath. But whenever I walk down there, like, and we don't, as we used to always sometimes go down at halftime too, right? Grab
Yeah,
something to drink. But now there's so many people that go to the games, can't
yeah,
do it.
can't do it.
But this last week, I did pop down for a little bit, and now I know why I don't go back down there at halftime. I
No, it's
walk
not
down there.
even. It's horrible down there at halftime, and that was even before. I haven't gone down in a few years, so
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I'm.
will not. I will not be going back. I'm not working tomorrow night for the Southgate game. I have another thing on my calendar, and then homecoming. I do work the game, but I'm down on the field for homecoming. But yeah, so I don't know. You know what? Our high school kids aren't bad. They sit in the student section.
Right.
They do it. The Wyandotte kids that were there were fine. The high school kids seem to do fine. I think it's when it's this element of younger kids that have this sort of free for all. Yeah, I'd lose my mind if I was down there. I'm
Yeah.
surprised. Yeah, that's my overrated. No offense to all you Seahawks and Mr. Bailey, and your kids down there. No offense, but it's overrated. What do you
All
got
right.
for underrated?
Underrated. So, I mentioned this when we were talking about college football. I mentioned it when we had the Maestro in. Um, Herb Street said this before, and I notice it more and more. The band is what makes a lot of times the college football game atmosphere a little bit different than the pros. So I'm going with the band. I think it makes such a cool atmosphere. The sound of the band at the game just makes it that. And again, you'll hear occasionally something at a pro game, and I'm not taking away from the pro game. I love the pro game, but I just, the band to me is such a unique part of the college and high school game experience. So for high school games, I'm going with the band.
And it's grown so much. I notice like Wyandotte had a small little pep band
Yeah.
at the game. They bring their own a little. It's not the full marching band.
Right.
We brought ours to Etzel, right? I
Yep.
think
Yep.
didn't we have some kids at Etzel Ford, which was pretty
I
cool.
know we did it one of the
Oh
two
no, no,
weeks.
I'm sorry, Trenton.
Was
Trenton.
it?
When we were supposed to be home, I'm sorry, it was the Trenton game.
No, I think we had something at one of. Maybe it was Taylor. We did have the pep band at one of the
Which is
games.
pretty. I mean, that was never. That was you wouldn't see that. I'm going to tie into that, like, and you sort of mentioned it when you're talking about the whole sense of community and what having a at least a competitive. You don't even have. And I said we're very fortunate. We've been competitive to being very good. We're back to back Downriver League champions. We've had home playoff games. So I think that's good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's only but even in years where we didn't win the Downriver League, we were competitive, right? We talked about that, how playing Wyandotte about 4 or 5 years ago, those were some great football games, some
Right.
great football games with Woodhaven. Having just to be able to say you're competitive, and this is not to knock these other schools that are trying, you're trying to build your program,
Right.
but that makes such a difference. It's not just the football parents and the band parents, but there's people there that are just community members that are there. The booster club, like, doing special menu items, the 50-50 draw. What wasn't the take home like over $500 for just a regular season
$500. Yeah.
game?
Mm-hmm.
For just that used to be like the homecoming number like what, about 10 years ago when we were first
Yeah,
doing this, right?
and like I said, man, that's what and going back to my overrated. I almost feel like I should have just said underrated for us because it is just it's something. And again, I know we're not the only ones. Now, I'm also fairly certain that you go to a Taylor game or something like that, it's probably not quite the atmosphere, but it's pretty damn cool here, man.
No, but you know what? Like, we went to that game at Taylor. They had a pretty good crowd for their home game. They had the fireworks that went off. They're doing no, in all honesty, they did some cool stuff, and their student section and their band was good. So I just think it's harder though. Like I saw, we talked about it, and I'm not trying to pile on to wind at them, but what was there last Friday compared to what was there 4 or 5 years ago in that
Sure.
famous game that we
Right.
lost where we were stuffed on the final 2 point
Mhm.
conversion. I mean,
Yeah.
that stadium that visitor side was packed, and it
Yeah.
wasn't that way Friday. And
Right.
Wyandott's they're a proud town, and maybe one day they'll get back to that, but right now they're not. And I'm not here gloating about it.
No,
We're just
no.
stating a fact.
Right.
And that's something that Gibraltar should feel very proud about. And I'm sure when we go to Trenton for the second time this year,
Uh,
next week, I'm sure they'll be pretty full. I think that's their homecoming, so of course it's going to be full.
yeah.
And then we go to Woodhaven, and as well as I know, that will be a very full stadium as well. There's some, a lot of stuff going on with that. And again, I think we go back to that week one. Airport brought a ton of people to Trenton. It wasn't,
Yeah.
even, something that was even further. So we'd love to hear what people think, what they're overrated under. We got to get some input from Coach Candela down in Georgia. There's states that football, so Texas, of course, there's been a whole TV show about it for
Sure.
years. Pennsylvania high school football had a big run too. You think about quarterbacks that came out of
Yeah.
the Pennsylvania thing. So
Ohio is obviously always mentioned in there as well.
yeah, yeah.
But Michigan, we're doing it, man. We're doing it.
Well, they said, wasn't there something like? Did you see that thing that said the most amount of NFL
Yes.
players were out of the Detroit public schools?
Detroit, yeah, yeah.
The
Week
biggest
one,
school
week one.
system,
Hmm.
week one, the biggest school system that had NFL
Yeah,
players was the Detroit public school
great
system.
public
That's
schools.
crazy.
It is. So yeah, thank you for I didn't even think about that, but you're
Yeah,
right.
that's a talk about local. It's
Right,
there you go.
right.
Also, hey, another good week for Detroit. Detroit Metro Airport voted best airport in the country.
Was it really?
Yeah, look at that.
Neat. I didn't know that.
All
It's
right.
better than
All right.
LaGuardia.
Better than Barcelona.
Yeah.
All right. So our education flip topic. So our topic is
Mhm.
last week was most memorable wins that weren't a championship. We're going to take it now. This for me was a lot easier because there's been a lot more heartbreak, it seems, than happiness, even for me as a Pittsburgh fan. So heartbreaking losses and some of these I was at. What I'm going to talk about, I was at two of these games in person that I'm going to put on my list. So do you want to go? Go ahead. You can go first.
Okay.
Give me
All
one
right.
of yours, and I'll give you one of mine, and we'll keep going until we run out because I got a list here.
Okay, you got a list. How many do you have?
One, two, three, four,
Okay.
and I
All
bet
right.
we matched. I don't have one that I think you're going to say, but I got four.
All right. So I'm going to take out. Okay. So I'm going to take out the NBA Finals, even though Rasheed
Yeah, like you
early,
can't do Robert Ory. You can't do Robert
right?
Ory, even though it wasn't a deciding game.
Isaiah spraining his ankle, losing by one on a bad call. It was a bad call. Game six. I know you say you got to overcome, but man, that was 14 seconds left. A horrible call.
Yes,
So taking that out, I'm
we
gonna.
all know the Pistons number one. Go ahead, say it.
It's Isaiah throwing the ball away. But I was in third grade. But
Okay,
that.
I was a little older. That was a gut punch, man.
Yeah. My brother, and actually, to be honest with you, my mom made me go to bed. So I woke up in the morning. My brother was he was like, "You're not going to believe what happened," and I'll never forget. So that's going to be my first one. It's not my number one, just because I wasn't quite old enough. But that's
Okay.
You go ahead.
I don't have a Piston one at all because, well, that was it. So I'm going to go with a game I was at. To me, it's the most gut-wrenching Lions loss in my lifetime. It was the Brett Favre at the Silverdome, where
Early
he
start.
chucks it across his body. I was in that end zone. My seats were in that end zone, right around the 10-yard line, and just a total gut punch. How he threw that ball
Yeah.
that far. Benny Blades, I think, was the safety.
No, it was Blades was the safety. Kevin Scott, number 38, was the corner. I was at the game too.
Okay.
That
Oh
was
yeah.
gonna be the Lions. Yes. So I'm.
Is that your Lions game? So
That's my
you've
Lions
taken.
one. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Do you want me to go again, and you can go? Well, first of all, I'll go because NFL wise, the Steelers lost multiple AFC championship games that they were very good. A couple,
Um,
the Denver game where Cordell Stewart was a quarterback and Bill Romanowski, jerk, in Three Rivers Stadium where he does the famous thing where he hits his head. I still to this day can't stand Bill Romanowski because of that. I was also at the AFC championship game. This one doesn't, I told you this doesn't hurt me as much. The year they lost to the Chargers, and Dennis Gibson, former Lions, knocked down the pass from Neil O'Donnell to Barry Foster in the end zone. I was at that game, the opposite end zone, watching them drive, and that was a huge upset. Steelers were huge. A lot of these AFC Championship games, they were big favorites. They were favorites over Denver. They were favorites over. They were supposed to win all these games. I wonder, like, how many. The one they even lost to the Patriots. They only, they were favorites, but I'm not as hurt on that one that I was at because I honestly think the 49ers were going to maul and kill anybody that went into that Super Bowl. They embarrassed San Diego a week later. So those multiple AFC champions, more so the Romanowski one. I'm glad they got payback that year and beat Denver, even though it was nothing near the same team to go to the Super Bowl. But man, that team annoyed me. And that Denver team went on to win the Super Bowl. So obviously that one was a much more winnable. If they won that AFC championship game, they probably had a good chance of winning the Super Bowl.
So I'm going to go, okay, one more Lions one. The playoff game against Dallas from, I believe, 2014 was the season. And again, although you didn't really chime in on that one too much. Max was more on that one. The pass interference was called, and the flag was inexplicably picked up. Then the punter, God, I can't remember the punter's name. Sam Martin punts like a 9-yard punt. It was just everything went bad at that point. That was a big gut punch because I thought that was a very good Lions team. Sue, that was his last game as a Lion. He was incredible. But I'm going to go with my number one, and this is a shout out to Mike Quinn because he mentioned this on text. And this, believe it or not, it's a Tiger game. When Tigers are up 1-0 in the series against Boston in the ALCS, up 1-0 in the series, took the first game at Fenway, up 5-2 in the 8th inning. Poppy comes up, bases loaded, and hits a grand slam. I'm sorry, it was 5-1. He tied it. And Torrey Hunter fell over the fence, just missed making a great catch. And it was just, maybe with the power of hindsight, we know this, but you knew they just weren't going to win the series at that point. And their starting pitching was as good as any starting pitching staff in our lifetime. Maybe save the Atlanta Braves of the 90s, but that pitching staff was amazing. And to lose that game, I firmly believe they win the World Series if they win that game. They were a very, very good team that year.
So yeah, that was right. That was on my list too. I just wrote Big Poppy.
Yeah,
that dumb cop out in the bullpen. God, there's the little things I remember about these games, and that guy raising his arms up in the air like if he did something besides standing there and probably eating about 8 hot dogs during that game. No offense to law enforcement officers,
of course not.
But so annoying and frustrating because you're right. That was I still contend that was probably, even though they didn't make the World Series, that was one of the best Tiger teams during that stretch. Yeah. And of course, Max mentioned this last week. The Pirates in the NLCS many years ago with Sid Bream walking around third base, Barry Bonds throwing a batting practice.
So again, and that was a good memory for me as a Taylor guy cheering for Steve.
Yes, and really the most shocking part of all that, not even was that Jose Lean, the second baseman, who was usually a flawless second baseman, had an error earlier in that inning that sort of botched that. And
do you remember the guy's name that got the hit?
God, no,
if I'm not mistaken, I'm sure we'll be fact checked on this one. I believe it was Francisco Cabrera. Cabrera being his last name. I believe
no relation to Miguel.
Right.
So there's a lot of games out there. I'm sure there's some other. We didn't mention some college games that I know were big around here. Depending on there's a lot of Michigan State games.
There is trouble with the snap. Just the kind of, I swear. So we were at the
trivia night.
But we were at trivia night, and I'd been humbled as a Michigan fan, and I wasn't going to gloat. Max was behind me, and he's like, I remember him saying, you need to accept Michigan's good. In fact, at that moment, he predicted them to go to the playoff because and again, Mike, I knew, thought they were going to win, but something just didn't feel right. And for it to happen, then, he offered to bet me because I said, I don't know, Max. I don't know. He's like, I'll bet Michigan. You bet Michigan State as the place happens. You should have bet me. And I think it took everybody in the room, I think just everything kind of paused for just a half a second, just to kind of
Shocking. And
figure
never,
out what
I haven't seen a fin. I mean, people talk about the Alabama Auburn game with the run back on the missed field goal, but I think that was more of, that was put into your heads a little bit because it can happen, and it was just as shocking in my opinion. But I think this was just all they had to do was punt the ball. Like they
yeah.
didn't have to like that because I believe if they missed that field goal, it was still tied, right? Like so, they're like even if Alabama, like you're not.
Yes, yes, they were going
Whereas
overtime.
Michigan's in the lead, just kick the
Yes.
ball away. I mean,
Anything.
anything but what happened can happen. It was just, and again, Sean McDonough, Sean, no, what was,
I think it's Sean. I think you're right.
it is, yeah, like the call is just, what a famous call. What a
Yeah.
famous call that will go down. All right. We'd love to hear people's input. I'm sure there's lots of input throughout the country, throughout the thing with teams. All right. Hot mic take. What do you have for this week?
It's funny that we've talked about trouble with the snap. I'm going to hold off on. I was kind of stuck between two, but I want to do this now. I really want to give a shout out to our UAW brothers and sisters, holding it down, on the picket lines, doing some amazing things. I'm sure we all have people that are there. I solidarity, man. I working people, the UAW helped this area grow into what it was. We're the Motor City, the car capital of the world, and I'm hoping those guys get what they deserve because they've taken a lot, and that's all of us working people. I think have some solidarity with them. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to them. I hope that they're holding strong, and I hope it continues until they get what they deserve.
And I want to say, because we always see comments or whatever, and people, first of all, it's negotiations. You aim
Yes,
high. We went through this
right,
last year with you aim high. So when you start getting mad at these individual things, I hear a lot of people complaining about the 32-hour work week or
right,
40% or this or that. You aim high so that eventually these things come together and you reach a point of, bringing back something you want to your membership. Like, and again, I think I've mentioned this before. This is the United States of America. Let freedom ring, let
yeah,
capitalism ring.
right,
If this is making you angry for some reason, which I don't know why, unless your mom is the GM chairperson, you've got
right,
$48 million at home. If she is, good for you.
right.
But for the other 98% of us that are listening to this podcast, go fill out an application for Ford. Go fill out an application for General Motors. If you think it's so great,
Yeah,
there's nothing stopping you from going and working that job. This is America. Go right ahead. I don't understand why there's anger and hatred in some cases for these people, which I never had. Like we mentioned this when they get their profit sharing. I don't get angry. Like, good for them. If
right.
someone wants to go work there, go apply, fill out the application, and work there. I don't
And
want to.
again, I don't know how deep. I know you have some roots in in other places here. My grandfather was a big member of the UAW Local 600. And I just I had there's a piece of my family in this Michigan book about Michigan history, and there's a picture of him with his UAW brothers and sisters, and it just kind of brings me back, when I see this right now. And again, I mean, livelihoods are at stake here, so I don't want to I don't want to speak for anybody. I'm hoping that they've taken so much, after the bailouts and all that stuff. They took a lot of hits. So I'm really pulling for them.
Well, great. So you gave your shout out to the UAW. I'm going to give my shout out to my cross country parents. Last week, we talked about like Max brought up the element of community, and I mentioned the Saavedras being some good parents but we have so many good parents, and the Pates. I know we mentioned like the Pates a lot, but they're cross country parents. I needed bailed out with like a team photo for a banner. Elizabeth handled that like a pro. Nathan Law, the Laws, so many people come and help set up these our kids with a nice setup and with snacks and food. Max Bailey, who's now a parent for my cross country team, how things come full circle. The guy that I used to coach with is now a parent. I was down a coach. Big shout out to Evie Crampton
Oh
competing,
man,
and
yeah,
I'm glad I tied this in. Her Ironman in
Iron Man.
Maryland, so she, with a valid reason, she wasn't at our meet Saturday. Max stood up and helped me coach that meet, and just like old times, we were running around New Boston Huron, not knowing what we're doing, but still coaching and having two kids place. But again, I just want to thank all of our parents. And again, it goes back to what we talked about last week, the idea of community. we put a sign up list up for snacks and help, and it's overflowing. People are signing up for more things, and I'm just happy with our numbers. We got a good amount of young people, new people running, and it's sort of like the sport that sometimes doesn't get a lot of publicity. There aren't crowds watching it. Usually they're just the parents, and our parents have done a good job. Mr. Von Holten brought me 2 loaves of rye bread this past week. He's a big
Oh,
bread guy. And so I want to give a shout out to him. So all of
cool.
those parents, but the whole element of community, the people that step up and they're doing what's best for the kids always. And that's great to see. And I just want to thank everybody for that. And we got a big meet at Jefferson Saturday down at Sterling State Park. So we're recording this very late Thursday night. We're
Late Thursday night,
late Thursday night. So that's what we got there. So two great hot mic hikes this week, UAW and community parents. So that's good. Hopefully that gets settled soon, because it's not good for the state of Michigan.
Not at all. It's not good for anybody. I mean, it's not good for trade right now. There's a lot of things going wrong with it, but those guys they've taken a lot. So guys and
That's
gals.
the famous line from the Seinfeld episode with the hat with the Kenny Rogers roaster. They're saying that's not good for anybody. All right, so you were wrong on your Lions pick last week.
Yeah.
They are home, and there's already some fear that this game is the featuring of the running back they passed up, who has had a little better start in 2 games. And there's already some questions about this draft pick, especially with what's going on down in Atlanta. This is a big game. I think if the Lions somehow lose this game, and especially if the running game is outmatched, man, it could really start going down a bad path. They were 5-point favorites and opened up. I think it's down to 3 for those of you that are family friendly and into wagering. What do you have for the Lions this week?
The Lions 28, Atlanta 24.
All right, so close game, and the Lions are having trouble with injuries. But again, that's everybody. Everybody's having. I mean, this is the NFL, man. These poor guys.
Yeah.
Another union note: they should all have lifetime health care.
Absolutely.
Once you play one NFL game, you should have lifetime health care. These guys are making billions. These owners are making billions, and you got guys that knees are being below. Every Monday night game, someone pointed out the last couple Monday night games, there's been a catastrophic injury. If you go back to the Buffalo Cincinnati game from last year, week 1 with Aaron Rodgers, who we always like to pile on a little bit, and then in the Steelers Browns game. I mean, it's just ridiculous, all this money that these guys don't have lifetime healthcare coverage. But I'm not the part of the National Labor Relations Board. I think the Lions, boy, I think they're going to win. I mean, but I really start to fear that, like, some people, the calls that are coming in are like, hey, this is a number 1 pick, and he's sort of, and I get it, but meanwhile in Atlanta, they're shoving the ball right into this guy, and he's, you know what I mean? Like, it's sort of like, what are we doing here? This was a top pick, and we're sort of like, we want to ease into it.
Well, but he's not. The Montgomery injury kind of, I think, is going to force him to. He's not that kind of back. I think it's an.
Don't take him. Don't take him.
Fair. That's fair. I think he's going to step up, though. But again, it's a fair. Mike, we're 2 games in. Can give him some time.
The brakes. I just worry. I haven't liked this pick since the pick was made. I just want that to be clear. I felt that I don't have a problem with taking the running back, but they took the wrong one if they were going to take this pick.
Okay.
We'll see. So Steelers are at the Raiders, I think. Well, this is that pre-mentioned most expensive ticket. I think that's where they are this coming week. I haven't looked at I guess I should probably look at my info. Of course, also with the Steelers have some injuries as well. I just want to confirm that. Yes, at Las Vegas. Sunday night football.
Ooh.
The Steelers offense has scored 2 touchdowns over 2 games. The Steelers defense has scored 2 touchdowns over 2 games. I think they wake up this week. I think they beat the Raiders. And I think the offense actually does something. And they start off 2-1. And I'm not burying the Bengals yet. I still think they're the best team in the AFC North at 0-2.
Can I tell you what I did with Joe Burrow and my fantasy team?
Benched him?
I was just kidding, but no, I traded him.
Well, he's hurt. You might have got some value there.
I'm telling you, Mike. He might, for fantasy aside, this is a guy that maybe they rushed him back a little bit, and maybe this is going to be a lingering injury, and they're just going to have to. They're not going to win without him, so they might struggle this year.
Well, we want to thank everybody for listening. We would love to hear, like I said, we want to hear some of the stuff we brought up today. I'd love to hear what people we want to hear. We specifically called out Coach Candela. We want to hear what people love about Friday Night Lights in this area, and then again those heartbreaking losses. Hopefully, no heartbreaking losses this week. College football again is we didn't even touch the Michigan State game. That wasn't even heartbreaking. That wasn't so. Hopefully this weekend the Lions fans we get a little, like I said, not as heartbreaking. Have a great week, and we will see you next week.